So we're now studying the conversation between Devahuti and her son, Lord Kapiladev, who had advented to teach the Sankhya system of philosophy. So in the very beginning of his presentation, Lord Kapiladev explained to his mother some basic concepts that you should transfer your consciousness from engagement in this material world and the three modes of material nature to the spiritual concept and the spiritual world. And how you do that is by associating with others, sadhus who do that, and by engaging everything in the service of the Lord. Basic information and foundational concepts. Hearing these, Devahuti wanted to know more details about the process that brings one to transcendence. And that's pretty much what we're going to study in these particular lessons today. One thing I want to note, however, is that, focusing on the lectures of Srila Prabhupada, after Devahuti asks her questions, then Lord Kapiladev's answers, the immediate first 15 to 20 verses, are they're like the essence of the entire process. So we'll do a deep dive into Srila Prabhupada's lectures in this part of the lesson as well. So now we'll go over to the texts and start from there. This is December 2022, lessons 7 and 8. Third canto, chapter 25, text 25. Some really nice forum posts were presented by several devotees in this one. In the Association of Pure Devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The process of advancing in Krishna consciousness and devotional service is described here. The first point is that one must seek the association of persons who are Krishna conscious and who engage in devotional service. Without such association, one cannot make advancement. Simply by theoretical knowledge or study, one cannot make any appreciable advancement. That's an important statement right there. It kind of like simplifies why one can't make association. Because without association, without understanding the process clearly from those engaged in it, then it's only theoretical knowledge. Because they do not associate with devotees, they cannot understand that the absolute truth can be a person and have personal activities. This is a very difficult subject matter. And unless one has personal understanding of the absolute truth, there is no meaning to devotion. To understand the personal activities of the Lord, one has to seek the association of devotees. And by such association, when one contemplates and tries to understand the transcendental activities of the Lord, the path to liberation is open and he is freed. One who has firm faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes fixed, and his attraction for association with the Lord and the devotees increases. Association with devotees means association with the Lord. The devotee who makes this association develops the consciousness for rendering service to the Lord. And then, being situated in the transcendental position of devotional service, he gradually becomes perfect. So this verse in itself is almost like a synopsis of the entire process of Krishna consciousness. Association with the Lord and the Lord's devotees increases one's faith and understanding. Like we have this Zoom, this kind of association, temple association, reading groups, temple festivals and things like that. Naturally, devotees share topics about the Lord and his activities, rather than some kind of impersonal concept or unclear information. Prabhupada said that simply theoretical understanding, like in colleges or someplace that might academically approach the Vedas. We can see that prior to Srila Prabhupada coming to the West, for hundreds of years, since the British entered India and started translating the Vedas, there are many British, German scholars who also translated some of these literatures. But by their translations, which was a very academic approach to Sanskrit, they didn't really become devotees. But with Srila Prabhupada's devotional presentation, hundreds and thousands of people all around the world are becoming devotees. So this is proof positive that association is so influential. So now let us continue. Sama, you want to pick some devotees to help read?
Thank you. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to our last Zoom for this year, just at the very last minute. Also, this is going to be very exciting, hearing directly from Srila Prabhupada. So let's start off today with Manvantara. Can you read?
Text 26. Thus, consciously engaged in devotional service in the association of devotees, a person gains distaste for sense gratification, both in this world and in the next, by constantly thinking about the activities of the Lord. This process of Krishna consciousness is the easiest process of mystic power. When one is actually situated on that path of devotional service, he's able to control the mind. Purport. The devotees are simply interested in being transferred to the personal association of the Lord. They have no more attraction for temporary or so-called happiness. That is the position of one who is yoga yukta. One who is fixed in mystic power is not disturbed by the allurement of this world or that world. He is interested in the matters of spiritual understanding or the spiritual situation. This sublime situation is very easily attained by the easiest process, Bhakti Yoga. Rubir Yoga Margahi. A very suitable word used here is Rubihi, or very easy. There are different processes of Yoga Marga, attaining yoga perfection. But this process, devotional service to the Lord, is the easiest. Not only is it the easiest process, but the result is sublime. Everyone should therefore try to take this process of Krishna consciousness and reach
highest perfection.
I can't see it.
Highest perfection of life.
Okay, thank you. I can't find it either, so thank you.
Thank you, Manvantara. What about this line? Can you say something about this? One in matters of spiritual one who is fixed in mystic power is not disturbed by the allurement of this world or that world. He's interested in matters of spiritual understanding or spiritual situation. Can you, this is what we are actually doing is, this is mystic, actually. This is mystic yoga, this bhakti yoga. So how does this affect you? What does this mean to you, that being fixed and the spiritual situation?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's probably more like a trance, kind of like you just don't get disturbed or deviated from the path.
Good. Not getting disturbed because you have some spiritual protection. I mean, do you find that? Do you find that? If we adhere to the phone, go on.
Yeah, it does get easier.
Say it again.
It does get easier, and you don't really realize that you're doing anything different. You know, when it becomes spiritual, you don't realize that you're doing anything different.
Yeah, it becomes, but before we go on, Shusha Rupini, who is on a train, can you make yourself muted? Because we're hearing the horn of the train. Shukshma, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you, darling. Okay, yeah, you get used to it, but it's ever fresh. You get used to it, and we do have protection. That's what is being said here. And we all should feel that we have protection. Because, of course, the amount that you take shelter of Krishna, that's how much protection you will have.
That's right. That's
Okay.
very
Thank you. Thank you, Manvantara. Let's go on with Sham. What I'll need to, Sham is not there, right? The second, Premanandaji. Can you read for us?
Yes, sure. Hare Krishna.
There you go.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-27. Thus, by not engaging in the service of the modes of material nature, but by developing Krishna consciousness, knowledge and renunciation, and by practicing yoga, in which the mind is always fixed in devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one achieves my association in this very life. For I am the Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When one engages in the spiritual activities of devotional service, naturally, he does not get any opportunity to engage in sense gratificatory activities. Krishna conscious activities are performed not blindly, but with perfect understanding of knowledge and renunciation. This kind of yoga practice, in which the mind is always fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotion, results in liberation in this very life. The person who performs such acts gets in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya therefore approved the process of hearing from realized devotees about the pastimes of the Lord. It does not matter to what category of this world the audience belongs. If one meekly and submissively hears about the activities of the Lord from a realized soul, he will be able to conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unconquerable by any other process. Hearing or associating with devotees is the most important function for self-realization.
Okay. What does that mean, liberation? How is it that a devotee can become liberated in this lifetime? Why?
Well,
What is it about?
Yeah. So my takeaway from this verse and purport is that the mind is the pivot of everything. If the mind is attached to matter, then it becomes material bondage. But if the same mind is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and in the process of devotional service, then we are on the path of liberation. So that's what my understanding is on attaching our mind to purely spiritual activities, which includes Krishna Katha and association of devotees and so on. So that's really what devotional service means. I mean, liberation indicates.
Okay, so in other words, liberation, because we are not dealing, when you engage in devotional service, you're not dealing with modes of nature, right?
Right.
We're not dealing with the modes of nature. That we become transcendental, not because we're doing anything except engaging in devotional service in a spiritual activity. In other words, when you engage in a spiritual activity, you are on the transcendental platform, and that's the liberated platform.
Absolutely.
A perfect example, which kind of like exemplifies it easily, is cooking. If someone's cooking for the deities, then because of their focus on doing things for the pleasure of the Lord, the attraction and sense gratification that might happen by being in contact with the food becomes transformed. It becomes it goes towards Krishna rather than towards oneself. We don't even taste anything before offering it to the deities when cooking for them. So in this way, one is liberated because there's no self-interest. It's for the pleasure of the Lord.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, and you also don't get the reactions of that activity. So that way you are liberated from material reactions.
Do you know that
That's a
verse in
potential.
Bhagavad Gita that talks about devotees not eating anything which hasn't been offered to the Lord? Anybody?
Verily, verily is the word. Verily. What is? I don't know. Other than that,
Which one? Which is a Patram Pushpam Pulam Toyam? Is that the one?
No, that's a good
No.
one. Jagnarthat Kamanonyatra.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Yoko Yam Karma Bandhana. There's no karma bandhana by offering things in yajna. Another example, of course, is Arjuna. He was going to kill people. He was being instructed, encouraged, enthused, enlivened to kill his grandfather and cousins. And one would naturally think that that would be a binding activity, a karmic reactions. But because it was done on Krishna's order and for Krishna's pleasure, then Krishna was telling him there won't be any reaction, adverse reaction.
Another verse is he who does not, if we don't offer our food to Krishna, then Prabhupada says, verily, we're eating only sin. So, and when we are engaged in sinful activities, then we have to suffer the results of that. So we don't want to eat sinful things, because then we won't be on the platform of transcendence or liberation. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Madhurya Leela, would you like to continue for us?
Sure,
Let's see.
I will.
Haribo, Madhurya.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25, 28 to 29. On hearing this statement of the Lord, Devahuti inquired, what kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me easily and immediately attain the service of your lotus feet? The mystic yoga system, as you've explained, aims at the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is meant for completely ending material existence. Please let me know the nature of that yoga system. How many ways are there by which one can understand in truth that sublime yoga? Prophet's purport. There are different kinds of mystic yoga systems aiming for different phases of the absolute truth. The Jnana Yoga system aims at the impersonal Brahman effulgence, and the Hatha Yoga system aims at the localized personal aspect, the Paramatma feature of the absolute truth, whereas, the Hatha Yoga system aims at the localized personal aspect, the Paramatma feature of the absolute truth, whereas Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service, which is executed in 9 different ways, headed by hearing and chanting, aims at complete realization of the Supreme Lord. As far as Jnanis are concerned, they're interested in Jnana Yoga, but even if one elevates oneself after great performance of austerity to the Brahman effulgence, there is a chance of falling down again to the material world. Therefore, just lost it. Therefore, Jnana Yoga does not actually end material existence. Similarly, regarding the Hatha Yoga system, which aims at the localized aspect of the Lord Paramatma, it has been experienced that many yogis, such as Vishwamitra, fell down. But Bhakti yogis, the ones approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead, never come back to this material world, as it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Yad gyatva na nivartante. Upon going, one never comes back.
Okay, so I
I
have
have
a
a
question.
question on that.
Okay, I have a question too. I want to ask you a question. Okay, you can ask the question first.
Well, I always thought the Hatha Yoga was the physical exercises.
Oh,
Isn't it? Hatha Yoga, wasn't that? I mean, we used to do Hatha Yoga in the old days. Wasn't that exercises and not
well,
referring to Paramatma?
it's supposed to calm down the senses. I think Kate can answer this one. Kate is Hatha Yoga instructor. Can you help us out with this, Kate?
Hare Krishna. My understanding is there's, you know, the all the different steps, the yama, the niyama, the pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses, the poses, the breathing. It's like a ladder, and at the top of the ladder is the, you know, the Paramatma or Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to God. That's the goal.
Good. So it's to calm down the senses. So that brings you to the different steps of realization. That's why you practice Hatha Yoga, to calm the senses. Yeah, that's it. But of course, we engage the senses in Bhakti Yoga.
The foremost teacher, Acharya, I guess you could call him, of that Hatha Yoga system is Patanjali. The Patanjali Yoga Sutras are generally considered the texts which lead one to understand this depth of that philosophy. And Prabhupada mentions in his comments that even Patanjali says that focus on the Supreme Lord as in the heart, the Paramatma, is the goal of this yoga. People get so caught up on the path of the different steps, asanas, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, that they actually get sidetracked along the way. That's why previously we just read that the mystic allurements no longer attract a person in devotional service because everything's being used in the service of the Lord. But the yogi who starts to perform yoga and austerities, the reaction to that is that mystic powers and pleasures start to become manifest, and the tendency for the mind to become diverted by those is, of course, there. But that's my understanding, that the goal of Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, is Paramatma realization.
Well, that's confirmed. I'd like to ask you a question. Can we go back to the text for a minute, Pati? Madhurya Leela. So
Yes.
this realization of Bhagavan is the complete realization of the absolute truth. How is that so? Why is that said?
It's the highest. It's a personal feature. It's a personal relationship. It's a personal feature, Bhagavan.
So
You know, there's different levels.
why is that considered to be the topmost?
Why? It's because it's the personal features. It involves devotional service. It's a personal relationship.
Maybe you can give that example of the sun, Madhurya Leela. What's
Oh,
that example?
yeah. So there's the sun rays and the sunshine. So as we get closer and closer, you know, there's the sun rays and the sunshine, they are very distant. Or Prabhupada also used that example of the forest. As you get closer and closer, you actually can see the personal feature and what's there. The personality of Godhead is there.
Right. So within this worship of Bhagavan, all the other things are present.
Yeah, that's right.
All the other things that
Yeah.
one can achieve,
Mhm.
realization of Paramatma, control of the senses, the impersonal Brahman, all of those things come from the personality of Godhead. So that's like the sun, right? So
Right.
the worship of the personality of Godhead includes all the benefits and helps one develop a personal relationship with the absolute truth, which actually is the only way the soul will really be satisfied. Premananda?
Yes, I think in Sri Ishopanishad it is mentioned that Bhagavan has three features, right? Satchit Ananda. So in the Bhagavan realization, we have the Ananda, the supreme bliss that is not present in the Paramatma realization or Brahman realization. So that's why Bhagavan realization is the highest, because it has got Ananda, the supreme bliss aspect of it.
Okay. That's also a discussion, because if someone is liberated, there must be some feeling of course, personal bliss is there, but there must be some awesome realization and happiness and peace and achievement, although it is incomplete. It's not, because we have a tendency, being Vaishnavas, we have a tendency to think, it's just the impersonal Brahman, it's just the Paramatma, where those features are Krishna as well. Parameti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan Eti, Sabhyate. All of these three are Krishna. And worship of the Supreme Brahman, worship of the Bhagavan, within that worship, we develop a knowledge of all the rest. Okay, Chaita?
Hari Bol. So, good morning, everyone. The question was asked, what is it that makes Hatha Yoga and Gyan Yoga inferior to Bhakti? And I think the answer is given in the purport that it's the only one of the yogas that completely dissolves our material existence.
Oh, wonderful. You want to put that back for a second, Patti? Let's see what that says. Where is that?
It's right at the bottom paragraph. But Bhakti yogis, once approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead, never come back. So this is major. You can practice Hatha Yoga for many years, but you're still going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
This is what needs to be taught in Hatha Yoga classes, among other things.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chaita.
Haribol.
And would you like to read, Chaita, the next slide?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you, Midoriya, also. Go on.
So, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-30. My dear son Kapila, after all, I am a woman. It is very difficult for me to understand the absolute truth because my intelligence is not very great. But if you will kindly explain it to me, even though I'm not very intelligent, I can understand it and thereby feel transcendental happiness. Purport. Knowledge of the absolute truth is not very easily understood by ordinary, less intelligent men. But if the spiritual master is kind enough to the disciple, however unintelligent the disciple may be, then by the divine grace of the spiritual master, everything is revealed. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur therefore says, Yasha prasadan bhagavat prasado. By the mercy of the spiritual master, the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavat Prasad, is revealed. Devahuti requested her great son to be merciful towards her because she was a less intelligent woman and also his mother. By the grace of Kapila Dev, it was quite possible for her to understand the absolute truth, even though the subject matter is very difficult for ordinary persons, especially women.
Okay, so how do you feel about that?
Woohoo! Well, it's a very controversial purport, but I think Srila Prabhupada is offering a caveat there in the very first sentence of the purport, in where he says, less intelligent men. So the point is, being less intelligent is not something that's restricted to women. It's across the board. We're all less intelligent just by the fact that we decided to come here.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true. So the way Devahuti, I mean, you know, we can all think of these things in terms of social and political things that are not to our liking. But this is actually the way to approach the spiritual master. This is actually the absolute recipe, how to approach the spiritual master. Completely submissive and humble.
Right.
You know, because we're, as you said, we're all in the material world, and we don't get out of the material world by defending our material situation, whatever it is, right? So anytime we have an opportunity to be humble, it's advised that we take advantage of it. What to speak of in front of the spiritual master. Now, if Devahuti would have said, I'm your mother, I am the mother of God, I have some credentials here. I mean, that's not the way to attain transcendental knowledge. You don't approach a guru. If you don't listen submissively and humbly, you're not going to receive this knowledge. So rather than defending on a political and social realm all the different things that engage the mind in this world, better we take the instructions of Lord Kapila Dev and the attitude of Devahuti as the prerequisite for hearing from a guru.
Beautifully
My humble
said.
opinion. Hare
Beautifully
Krishna.
said. And just see how humility is not so popular in politically correct circles.
Hare
Everybody's,
Krishna.
everybody's high on their horse. So,
High on their horse, that's for sure. Till the horse starts to jump and then you fall off. Hare Krishna. Okay. Sham, thank you, Chaita. Thank you. Sham Govinda, would you like to read?
Yes. Thank you, Mother Samapriya.
Okay.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-31. Sri Maitreya said, after hearing the statement of his mother, Kapila could understand her purpose, and he became compassionate towards her because of being born of her body. He described the Shankya system of philosophy, which is a combination of devotional service and mystic realization, as received by disciplic succession.
Okay. Go to the next one. Read this next one.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-32. Lord Kapila said, the senses are symbolic representations of the demigods, and their natural inclination is to work under the direction of the Vedic injunctions. As the senses are representatives of the demigods, so the mind is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The mind's natural duty is to serve. When that service spirit is engaged in devotional service to the Personality of Godhead, without any motive, that is far better even than salvation. Purport. Kapila Dev said that when the senses, without desire for material profit or other selfish motives, are engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in devotional service. That spirit of service is far better than siddhi, salvation. Bhakti, the inclination to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is in a transcendental position far better than mukti or liberation. Thus, bhakti is the stage after liberation. Unless one is liberated, one cannot engage the senses in the service of the Lord. When the senses are engaged either in material activities of sense gratification or in the activities of the Vedic injunctions, there is some motive. But when the same senses are engaged in the service of the Lord and there is no motive, that is called animita, and is the natural inclination of the mind. The conclusion is that when the mind, without being deviated either by Vedic injunctions or by material activities, is fully engaged in Krishna consciousness or devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is far better than the most aspired for liberation from material entanglement.
Oh, so quickly, can you just tell me how that is so? How that last line, everything read up until here is now supported by this last line. Read the last sentence again.
Okay, the conclusion is that when the mind, without being deviated either by Vedic injunctions or by material activities, is fully engaged in Krishna consciousness or devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is far better than the most aspired for liberation from material entanglement.
Okay, so what is the conclusion there? How do you see that?
Well, from if you just read strictly what's said, it says that bhakti is higher than liberation. So that's basically the conclusion at the end.
Well, why is that? Well, actually, you had stepped out for a minute, but can someone else say, or why is bhakti higher? I mean, if you engage in bhakti, are you going to be liberated? Are you missing out on liberation if you engage in bhakti?
Well, you get both, but I guess I wasn't here for the conversation, but liberation doesn't necessarily reestablish relationship with Krishna. So that's the soul's only going to be nourished in that relationship because that's his constitutional position. Well, it's service to the Supreme.
Okay, good. And in Bhakti, liberation is actually there, which we're going to hear now. And Srila Prabhupada is going to speak. And then we're going to go on with our discussion based on what Srila Prabhupada has said. And I hope that everyone has listened to these lectures. I have been listening nonstop. I can memorize every single word that Prabhupada has said according to these lectures. It's fantastic. So, but thank you, Sham. That was very good. Good for you. I just want to ask Premananda if you would read this, the Sanskrit, the verse here, and then we'll go on and hear Prabhupada. And then Kate, listen somewhat attentively, because then you're going to comment on this.
Actually, Premananda, do the next verse. It's not this one. Srila Prabhupada will say the Sanskrit in this one.
Oh,
And then you
okay.
can say it in the
Let's
next
listen
one.
to
What I did here was now we're going to start with a series of slides with Srila Prabhupada's lecture in it and an audio clip for that slide. So the slide will be there and we can see it. And Srila Prabhupada's audio will come on so that we can follow along and read the transcript with his voice. One of the byproducts of this, hopefully, is trying to help devotees that find it a little difficult to hear Srila Prabhupada and understand his accent and follow his train of thought. By doing that this month over and over and over again, hopefully that will bring a whole new current and flood of information and possibilities to everybody's devotional service. Those of us who joined Krishna consciousness when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet, practically speaking, it wasn't like today, where there's so much diverse information available in YouTube and MP3s and podcasts, and the media barrage is overwhelming. So all we did was we heard Srila Prabhupada. There was a group in Los Angeles called Golden Avatar, and the Bhaktivedanta Archives in its original form was just a few devotees who took those transcriptions and or those tapes and made them available in little cassettes that we would listen to. So naturally, we became very accustomed to hearing Srila Prabhupada. But I think that many devotees today don't have that opportunity. So please don't have that's not what happens in their life. There's so much other things. So when you hear Srila Prabhupada, you'll notice the difference. And hopefully this format will help it become more of an easy opportunity for you so that you can get his lectures. They're available. There are 20 gigabytes of his lectures. So that's a lot with all the music and everything. So let's go to those. And Sama, who's going to speak?
Kate is going to speak next. But let's hear. So Kate, listen to what Prabhupada is saying, and you can follow also along. We're going to be able to read it. And then you can speak. Pati, what about this verse by Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Oh, that's Prabhupada saying. I can't hear you.
That's Bivi Mangal Thakur. And
Bivi
what we can do then, everybody should have listened or at least read the transcript. I assume that, so I didn't put in the whole story of Bivi Mangal Thakur and how he became a devotee. But basically, let's see how this goes.
Devanam gunalinganam anusavika karmanam satta evaika manaso vritti sabhamiki tuja animitya bhagavati bhakti siddhe gariyas. Bhakti is transcendental even to mukti. People generally consider dharma, artha, kam, moksha. In the beginning, dharma, artha, economic development, kama, sense gratification, then moksha, merging into the Supreme One. But bhakti is above that. Siddhe gariyasi. It is above mukti. Mukti is not very much important thing for a bhakta. Billamangal Thakur says, Bhakti stai sthiratara jadi bhagavan sya daivena phalati divya kishora murti mukti mukulita anjali sevate asma dharmartha kamma samaya pratiksha.
Did everybody hear that okay? That sound came through? Okay, nice. One
Yes.
thing, just one thing before you speak, Kate. Note how Srila Prabhupada constantly refers back to the verse. Siddhir Gariyasi, and he talks here, Siddhir Gariyasi. That will go on throughout the whole thing. Go ahead, Kate.
I was just wondering. I was wondering the same question you had asked Samapriya in the last verse. How do we know that bhakti is transcendental? Is our transcendental nature when it's so hard for? I mean, if it was, then why isn't everybody just so easily, nicely, 100% all day and all night serving and engaging all of our minds and senses all the time in service? But he's saying here that that bhakti is above liberation. So then that kind of answered the question to me. I mean, we're not looking for liberation, but how do we know that bhakti is the topmost?
Well, okay, that's your question. How do we know bhakti is the topmost? You have to hear from someone who knows, right? You have to hear from the absolute truth. You have to. I think we discussed this previously, right, Bhakti? That there's different sources of knowledge, right? The Vedas, the spiritual master, the self-realized souls. So, and of that, the Vedas are most important because they're spoken by Krishna. They're spoken by God. So it's not that you randomly accept someone. Even if you take a spiritual master, it's described in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the qualification of a spiritual master who has seen the truth. He can impart knowledge to you because he has seen the truth. This is not a whimsical thing. When you finally encounter that person who's a pure devotee, spiritual master, then your duty is to submissively and humbly hear from him. So if the spiritual master who you have already done research and see that he's following through the whole disciplic succession, if he says something, then you can believe it, then you can accept it. And Prabhupada is saying that bhakti is higher than mukti. And Krishna says bhakti.
All of these things that we're constantly entangled in, in our daily lives, the artha, the kama, bhakti's above that. It solves all those problems, right?
Right. So what's the problem?
It's also not just a dogmatic formula that you listen to somebody else and automatically everything will become realized to you. There's a system of rendering service and inquiring. Tadvini pranipatena pariparshnena sevaya. It means that approach the spiritual master, inquire submissively, and render service. So what Devahuti has done is she's done this with her son. She's listening attentively, and she showed even with Kardama. We saw her nature before. He told her what to do, she did it, and she was benedicted. So I think the answer will also, this very question, perfect answer, question, Kate. How do we know? Let us go through this system of listening to Prabhupada explain it and see if it becomes more clear, because that's the process.
And we have the perfect person to hear from.
So we'll go to the next slide, Sam.
Yeah, let's go. Thank you, Kate. That was good. Okay, Ian, my friend Ian. So please listen to Prabhupada speak this next slide.
Prabhupada doesn't speak on this one. He just said the Sanskrit. So go ahead and have Ian just read the verse.
Oh, he doesn't speak on this.
This isn't from the lecture. This is actually, Srila Prabhupada referred to a lecture, referred to a verse by Bhivi Mangal Thakur.
Oh.
I assume that everyone understands who Bhivan Mangal Thakur because it was so much in that lecture about it, and at least you could have read it. He was, anyway, I'm going to assume that. And this is the verse that he composed and is in his book, Krishna Karnamrita. So go ahead, even with this.
Well, did you want Premananda to read this one?
Sure.
Verse? Okay. Premananda, could you read this verse? And then Ian, you read the translation.
Okay, thank you. Bhakti stvai stiratara yadi bhagavan syat daivena falati divya kishora murti mukti mukulitanjali sevatyasman dharmartha kama samaya pratikshaha.
Thank you. Ian?
Okay, Hare Krishna. Haribol?
Yes, Haribol. Can you read
Okay.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh my Lord, if one engages in your pure devotional service with determination to become visible in your original transcendental youthful form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As far as liberation is concerned, she stands before the devotee with folded hands waiting to render service. Religion, economic development, and sense gratification are all automatically attained without separate endeavor. It was the answer.
Isn't that good?
Yeah. So one
So
does not necessarily. Yeah. Can I?
Go on.
So one does not necessarily have to seek for liberation, as most of us want. The moksha, because it's there in devotion service. And it says that who is there with folded hands, ready to say, "Here am I. What can I do for you?" So there's no separate endeavor. I mean, in getting bhakti, whatever people are striving for, the other kind of yoga, control of the senses and all those things, that comes with it. So bhakti is supreme there.
Very good.
One example that's given is if a person has $100, then they automatically have $10. In other words, like Samapriya was explaining before, one engaged in bhakti yoga automatically understands the impersonal Brahman and the Paramatma feature. Similarly, one who has $100 already has $10 or $20 or $30. It's all inclusive plus more.
Also, another thing that Prabhupada is doing here in this using this whole analogy and quoting from Govamangala Thakur, he is showing his reference. We were talking about how do you know, Kate was asking, how do you know someone is, qualified, what he's saying is true, how do you know? So Prabhupada himself is showing, he is quoting from a self-realized soul. He is quoting in the simplistic succession. He is using reference. He told the whole story about Govamangala Thakur. And you see how when Prabhupada writes, he's always quoting from different places, he's not saying, and he said, I'm not saying this. One time, I think it might be on one of the tapes, calling people a rascal. He said, they are rascals. And he said, I am not saying, this is Krishna saying. He doesn't say what his opinion, who cares for our opinion? What we do is we quote from the authorized, self-realized soul, and then we understand it, and then we actually have the same opinion as the self-realized soul. That's perfection. That's not that we, as we were saying, my husband was saying before, we just blatantly follow something without, blindly. That is not what we're doing. We want to understand it and understand that this is the path toward this is the truthful path, and this is the path toward the truth. Is that clear? Okay. Thank you, Ian. Now we'll hear from Prabhupada again.
And who is going to speak after so they can be very attentive?
Okay. Faye, would you like to? Faye, you listen attentively, and then you can comment on what Prabhupada says. Is that all right? All right. Faye, are you
He has
there?
a book,
Yes, Mataji.
Krishna Karnamrita, Billamangal Thakur. That is recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for reading Krishna Karnamrita. So in that book, he writes, Bhakti stai Bhagavan jadi sthiratarasya. If you have got fixed up devotion unto you, my Lord, Bhagavan, then Daivena Spurati Dibbak Kushora Murti, then very easily we can see your form, Kishora Dibbak Kishora Murti, your divine form, Kishora Murti, very young boy. Krishna is always Kishore. Krishna's another name is Kishore. Kishora Murti. Kishore means Koishor. Before marriage, before 11 to 16th year, this is called Kishora age. So Kishora Murti, Krishna is always Kishora Murti. So, by devotional service, one can see the Kishora Murti of Krishna very easily. Bhakti stai stiratara jadi Bhagavan sya. If it is possible, then very easily we can see you.
Leave this up here, Pati. Faye, you want to say something about this?
Good morning, Hare Krishna, Mataji. If we go back to the description of focus and continuous focus upon an object, which Bila Mangala Thakur experienced, he pursued the company of, I believe it's pronounced Chintamani. Chintamani, thank you, Mataji. He was willing to go through flooded rivers and torrents of rain to pursue the object of his intense affection. And she was amazed that he did so after a storm and flood. And she reminded him that if he would only focus his attention, affection, and devotion on Krishna's lotus feet, how much better his entire life purpose fulfilled, everything right there. So he actually suddenly sees the light, metaphorically speaking. She's telling him the truth. The result is he shifted his focus from that and attentively put his full focus upon the lotus feet of the Lord. Now here we're seeing in the last two sentences, so by devotional service, one can see Krishna very easily. In other words, we have got to be laser intent in our focus on the lotus feet of the Lord. And devotional service is the methodology to do so, that harnesses our senses in the proper direction in the service of the Lord. Because we've got it backwards here on planet Earth. We're engaging our own senses in our own service. And as Srila Prabhupada told us many times, you can serve your senses or in Maya, or you can serve Krishna.
Very good. That
Very
was
beautiful.
perfect. That was beautiful. So whoever didn't hear Prabhupada talk about Bilvamangala Thakur, Faye did a wonderful job explaining the whole pastime. Thank you, Faye. That was beautiful.
Thank you, Mataji.
You know, the book that Bilvamangala Thakur wrote and Lord Chaitanya recommended us to read is a very profound book of deep surrender and love for Krishna. It's a very wonderful It's about complete love and surrender. You know, his very elevated platform. Premanandaji?
Yeah, a quick question on that book, Krishna Kandamrita. So in some ISKCON circles, it is generally said that we should not immediately jump to reading that book because it's for very advanced devotees. Do you also subscribe to that view?
Definitely. Read
I
Bhagavad Gita.
haven't read it yet, so I'm just asking.
Okay, I would say become very adept at the philosophy. You know, stick around for about 20 years or 30 years or maybe 50 years. Then,
Okay.
you know, I mean, this is very advanced because to come to the point where you understand your eternal relationship with Krishna, other than being the servant, we have relationships, mother, father, lover, you know, nurse, teacher. All these relationships are present in the spiritual world, and a self-realized soul understands his relationship with Krishna. And Chaitanya Charitamrita, what Lord Chaitanya, the whole thing about Lord Chaitanya, he's speaking about that, about our different relationships with Krishna. But until, and probably called Chaitanya Charitamrita the postgraduate study. Read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and understand that we're the servants of Krishna and that we're turning away from Maya, turning toward Krishna. Be secure in that. Then naturally these things you'll have a desire to hear more of the confidential pastimes that Krishna has with his intimate devotees.
On the other side.
There.
When Lord Chaitanya traveled for 2 years, you might remember, after he took sannyas and accepted a renounced order of life and left Navadvip. He went to Jagannath Puri, but he only stayed for a few months. Then he left and he traveled throughout South India for 2.5 years. During that entire time, he traveled all over the subcontinent, visited hundreds and thousands of temples, preached his Sankirtan movement. But on that trip, he picked up only 2 books that he brought home with him back to Puri, had those transcribed into different, because they didn't have printing presses, so he couldn't bring a whole bunch of books with him. He brought copies of those books back to the devotees in Puri and said, read these books. One was Brahma Samhita, and the other was Krishna Karnamrita by Bivimangal Thakur. So it is a recommended book. It's not super intimate. Parts of it are, but mostly Karna means ear, and Amrita means nectar. So it's the nectar for the ear descriptions of Krishna. And in order to try to, be careful of being sahaja or something when reading intimate descriptions of Krishna's beauty, but basically we should understand that that book is recommended by Lord Chaitanya.
But wouldn't we say that we should read Bhagavad? We should know the philosophy first, because it's it's easy for one who is not adept at, first of all, understanding you're not this body. Did you? Okay, so we're talking about Bivimangal Thakur. Does everybody remember the story that Prabhupada told about him plucking out his eyes because he was so disturbed at seeing the form of a woman? He felt that was a distraction. So you could see the depth of his devotion. Just be careful. You could try it, and then if it's something that is above your capability at this time to understand, then Ian.
Okay, thank you.
Ian, did
Okay.
you?
Yes, there is I think in the readings, I think it just said that Chintamani was sort of regarded as his guru.
The Bharma Pradarshaka Guru, the one who brings you this. There's different gurus, 3 gurus. Pati, you want to take that?
Sure. He's paying obeisances to her because she inspired him, as Faith so nicely explained, that if you had this much faith and this much attraction and underwent this much endeavor to please Krishna, then how much more beneficial it would be for you than me, who was a prostitute. So by that instruction, that's all she did. That's all she said to him. just like Dhruva's mother also told him to go to the forest when he was frustrated. That type of a guru is called Vartma Pradarshika Guru, one who leads the way. But there are two other types of gurus which are generally more important and give much more instruction. One is the Siksha Guru, of which there can be many people who give instruction. Shiksha means instruction. And Diksha is the one who actually gives initiation of the mantras, so one can perform pujas and worship. So in this way, in the beginning of his book, Bivimangal Thakur offers his obeisances to Chintamani, his Vartma Pradarshika Guru, because he feels humble enough to give her credit for pointing him in the right direction.
That's a very important thing to happen. Krishna arranges that we hear from a certain person about the eternal path back to his lotus feet. So without that, you can't take shelter of a Shiksha or Diksha Guru. If you
read Samapriya's book, you can find out about her Vartma Pradarshika Guru.
Which is very unusual. You never know. Prostitute, hippie, who knows what they're going to do. Okay, shall we go on with Prabhupada reading? And then after that,
who should listen? Yeah.
I think Arundhati left. Okay. Ayash, there was someone, Ayash. Okay, then we'll have to start again. So Manvantaraji, would you pay attention to this, and then you can read. And then you can comment.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us, therefore, that actually if you want something from God, that should be only begging for his service. This Hare Krishna Mahamantra means addressing God, Krishna, Hare, and his energy, Hara, Srimati Radharani, or Lakshmi. Hare, oh, the internal potency of Krishna. Hara is Krishna's internal potency. The external potency is Durga, and the internal potency is Radharani. Jai Radhi. So, this is Daivi Prakriti. Mahatmanastu mang prartha Daivi Prakriti masrita. The devotees, they take shelter of the Daivi Prakriti, Radharani, Lakshmi ji. They worship therefore Vaishnava, Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, Sita Ram. The first of all, the energy. The energy. So, this Hare Krishna mantra is first addressing the energy, the internal energy, potency of Krishna. Hare, from Hara to Hare, that is the Sambodhan. So, Hare Krishna, or Radharani, or Lakshmi, or Sita. And Krishna, or Rama, or Narayan, the same thing. Hare Krishna, addressing them. Oh my Lord's energy. So, when you address somebody, you want to ask something. So if they reply, yes, why you are calling? Then you calling, please engage me in your service. This is the prayer. Not that give me money or give me beautiful wife or many followers. This is material hankering.
Wow. Okay. Before we go on with Manvantara, do you know this word Daivi? Daivi means spiritual, right, Prati? The Daivi.
Yes.
So this is the internal, whereas Durga is the external energy. That's another definition here. We can learn this. That the Daivi Prakriti is the internal energy of the Lord, as opposed to Durga being the external. Durga is the material energy, the Maya potency. So, Manvantaraji, what can you tell us about what Prabhupada has said in these two little paragraphs here?
It's nice to practice, and so you can reach the realization. When doing service, especially like at the temple, devotees usually offer prayer along these lines, and the Sanskrit is difficult for me to recite because I'm really bad with that. But the only thing that I get from it is that prior to engaging in the service, you pray to Krishna, saying, like, please engage my eyes, my ears, my tongue, my mouth, everything, so that I can please you properly. Allow all my senses to be engaged in your service in such a way that I can be an instrument to your pleasure.
Okay, so that is there, definitely. Wait, go back, Patsy, please. But we see Prabhupada is talking about the energy of the Lord, and we're approaching the energy first. Hare Krishna, Sita Ram, Radhe Shyam. We approach the energy. Is there any real thought that you have about why do we approach the energy?
Oh, okay. Because it's the internal potency of Krishna.
Right.
That is the personification of his pleasure potency.
Right. True. So Prabhupada, or the spiritual master, represents this internal energy, and Radha or Sita, this internal energy acts as the spiritual master. What was I saying before, Pati? We were talking about this before, how the internal energy, and we address the internal energy, and it's like addressing the spiritual master, and we cannot get to Krishna without the spiritual master, who is representing the internal energy of the Lord, because he is giving the internal energy. What we were talking about that.
Yeah, I think what you're saying was mentioned before in the previous classes, and it's just like an extension of that. Yeah, it's clearer when you say that the internal potency, the guru, is the representation of that internal potency.
And we can see that how that is, because he is giving us the internal energy. He is giving us this knowledge of transcendence of Krishna, that he is giving us that internal energy. It's not that you go to school to be a doctor, that he's giving that doctor, that teacher is giving you the external energy. This is the internal, eternal energy of the Lord that's being presented by the spiritual master, who is a representation of the internal energy.
Yeah, I think it's a graph also. There was a graph that describes the different agencies of Krishna, and the guru is one of that. I think what you said is actually, yeah, I'm learning from this. This is building from what was mentioned earlier, and yeah, it's consistent. So
yeah, it's a nice way to think of it. Patsy, were you going to add to it?
Yeah, I'm just saying, keeping our eye on the theme here. What's being described by Srila Prabhupada is that when we approach God with prayer, it's not that we should be asking anything for our material situation. What we're doing is, through the process of devotional service, is refining our sentiments. Our sentiments in the material world are selfish. That's why we're here. But the sentiments of the residents of the spiritual world are totally in love with Krishna, and everything's for Krishna's pleasure. So what he's talking about here is that one who's in that liberated state, Kapila Dev's explaining to his mother that by this devotional service, one transcends everything material, because there's no material desires in such service. So Prabhupada's talking about when we chant our rounds with this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us that we approach the energy of the Lord, which is the pleasure potency of the Lord, it gives the Lord pleasure. Please engage me in your service, so that if I serve you, Krishna will be pleased.
And in the same way, when we serve the Guru, Krishna is pleased. That's our via medium. The Guru is the via medium. So if we think in terms of this Hari, the internal energy, and the Guru representing that makes it, for me, it made it really clear. What do you think, Mamatar?
It
You
sounds
also got
the Radharani's club got it right then.
okay. You're right. The Radharani Club got it right, because we're serving the internal energy.
They say something similar to Dhruva Maharaja's mother. You know, you gotta be born from Radharani before you can approach it. It's just comical. They have this thing. It's always Radhe Radhe, and then I'm always like Sham Sham. But yeah, it sounds like they got it right.
Okay, you got a few leelas mixed up there,
Okay,
but
let's go on to the next one.
we better go on. Uh-oh.
And who's listening? Who's gonna speak after this one?
Okay, Sham Govindaji, would you like to listen with attention so that we can ask you what Prabhupada is actually saying here?
The desireless is not possible. Desirelessness means you have to purify your desire. Don't desire anything except the service of Krishna. That is desireless. Animitya. Animitya bhakti siddhe gariyasi. If you come to that position, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaching us, na dhanang na janang na sundaring kavitang vajagadisha kamaya. Mama janmani janmani share. He says janmani janmani, birth after birth. That means he does not require even salvation. Because salvation means apunar bhava janma. No more janma. No more birth. No more birth. There are two kinds of no more birth. For the Mayavadis or impersonalists, they want to stop birth to merge into the existence of the Supreme. Brahma Nirvana. Brahma Nirvana, the Buddha philosophy teaches Nirvana, devoid of all material desires. That much. He does not give any more. Shankaracharya gives furthermore, the Brahma Nirvana, that you become desireless of this material world, but you enter, merge into Brahma. That is called Brahma Nirvana. And the Vaishnava philosopher says that you make null and void all your material desires, enter into Brahma and be engaged in the service of the Lord. This is called bhakti. That service is not ordinary service. The service to the Lord is not to be calculated as equal to this material service. Then Mayavadi philosophers, they cannot understand it. But Krishna says personally that this devotional service is in the transcendental platform, Brahma service. Therefore he says, Mancha Vyavicharini Bhakti Yogina Ja Sevati. This Bhakti Yoga, one who is actually employed, engaged in pure devotional animitya, without any motive, without any material purpose. That is real spiritual service.
Wow, that's beautiful. We are so blessed. So, Sham, animitya, Prabhupada says, without any motive. How can you understand this?
Well, I think it links back to one of the verses we read. The example was given that when the mind is purified, it's Lord Vishnu, right? I remember reading that. And I think Prabhupada actually gives an example of this in this canto. I may be wrong, but he gives an example of a candle. So a flame is burning on a candle, because there's a reaction between the oxygen and the carbon in the wax. And so in material consciousness, the wax and the oxygen burn. But the example of transcendental consciousness is that the flame still burns, but there's not a reaction between the oxygen and the carbon in the wax. It's just the connection with the internal potency or the spiritual energy. And so this comes, in my humble understanding, this is the difference of being desireless, is that all your desires aren't in contact with matter, they're in service to the Supreme Lord. And so there's not any bondage. There's not a reaction.
No motive.
Yeah.
Very good. What do you think, Patti?
I've never heard that example before. I don't know where that is.
But it makes sense. It does make sense because if you talk about no reaction, that was kind of, anyway.
I'm going to find it after this class too.
Okay. Yeah, maybe post it on the one of the forums for this topic.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we go on? Thank you, Sean. Should we go on hearing Prabhupada or? Okay, and the next person, Premananda. Can you hear with attention what Prabhupada has to say?
Yeah, thank you.
Arjuna, on his own account, he was not willing to fight. No, Krishna will not fight. The other side, then my relatives, my brother, my nephews, no, I cannot kill them. But when he understood that Krishna wants this fight, he said, yes, I shall do. Karishe Bachanam. So this is bhakti, that we have to do anything for pleasing Krishna. That is called animitta, no condition. Ahituki, ahituki means no condition. Or animitta, no reason. Everything should be done for Krishna. So, animitya bhagavati bhakti siddhe gariyasi. That is better than siddhi. Siddhi means self-realization or Brahma realization. Therefore, Krishna says also, what Krishna says and what Kapil Dev says, they are the same thing. Therefore, here it is also said, Bhagavan Uvacha. And in the Bhagavad Gita also you will find Bhagavan Uvacha. Never said Krishna Uvacha or Kapil Uvacha, because they are Bhagavan. So, those who are self-realized soul, who know what is Bhagavan, so instead of speaking Kapil Dev Uvacha, he says, Vyasdev says, Srimad Bhagavatam is compiled by Srimad Vyasdev. So as Bhagavad Gita also, it was heard by Arjuna, it was released to Sanjaya, and then from Sanjaya heard Vyasdev, and he made it recorded in writing in Mahabharata. So he says Bhagavan Uvacha. Bhagavan Uvacha means that is the perfect version. There is no mistake.
Very good. So there's two real important points that I'm seeing here. One, but what do you see, Premanandaji? Before I say.
Yes, so the first paragraph, Srila Prabhupada is expanding on the meaning of animitta, which is basically serving without any material motives. And he's giving the example of Arjuna, where initially in the beginning Arjuna did not want to fight because he had his own personal attachment to his family members. But Krishna says, no, you should fight for me on my behalf without any attachment and motive. So that's what the first paragraph is telling us. And in the second paragraph, the way I understand is because I did not directly connect the flow from first to second paragraph, but what I'm understanding from the second paragraph is that this is the philosophy that is given to us right from the top. So disciplic succession, it is given by Krishna and Kapila Dev, Vyasadev, everyone is repeating the same philosophy to us. So this is not some concocted philosophy that is being given to us. So this Animita principle is truly transcendental and is coming down to us to disciplic succession. So that's how I understand this second paragraph, even though I could not directly relate these two paragraphs because I think there was a break in the flow while reading it, but that's my understanding.
But sometimes Prabhupada does that. He says something, then he says another thing to help describe the previous thing. So the two things I got from this were, first of all, bhakti means doing anything for Krishna, always doing, just that's your motivation, is to please Krishna, and you can do anything. Meaning whatever Krishna wants you to do, you will just take all risks on behalf of Krishna. And this last sentence is really wonderful that Prabhupada said. So he says, Bhagavan Uvacha. So it's Bhagavan. I thought that was interesting because we read the Bhagavad Gita, it's always Bhagavan Uvacha, you know. And here Kapila is saying Bhagavan, and in this story we're hearing Bhagavan Uvacha because it's the same person, Bhagavan. What do you think about that?
Yes, absolutely, that's correct. So Prabhupada is reminding us again and again that who Bhagavan is, and that it's not some ordinary person who is saying this. It is the Supreme Lord who is saying these instructions to us.
Right, it's the same. And when he incarnates in different places on the battlefield or with Devahuti, Kapila Dev, it's the same. He's the same person.
Bhagavan,
he expands himself. So Sri Bhagavan, right? Okay, very good. Shall we go on?
Let's go through here. He was having difficulty connecting these two. Let's see and hear what he's saying and how it connects to here. First, he's talking about animita, no condition. It means unconditional. In other words, I'll do it no matter, I'll do it whether, even if I don't want to do it. Arjuna didn't want to fight, but I'll do it because Krishna wants me to do it. That means sometimes we said no motive. Of course, there's motive. There is always some motive. The motive is to please Krishna. That's motive. So we can't say animita means without motive. That's where desirelessness, we just read about desirelessness, is not possible. So it means unconditional. It's a little more of a refined understanding here. Then he says, animita, one who performs this, Bhagavati bhakti siddhir gariyasi. This is better than siddhi, which is what we're talking about from the verse that Kapila Dev said. One who engages in devotional service unconditionally, that is better than salvation. That was the verse itself spoken by Kapila Dev. So Prabhupada is saying here the same thing, that, and then he goes on to say, yes, as you were just discussing, who is saying this? Bhagavan is saying this. He knows. He knows what liberation means, and he knows what's more dear than liberation is service to him directly.
Wow.
Right. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Okay. Oh, Chaita, you want to say something?
Okay, who's next then, Sam?
I thought Chaita had her hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. In the lecture, it was mentioned siddhi and mukti as two results of performing this devotional service. So I'm trying to understand the difference between the two of them.
Well, I know there are different material siddhis, but here he said siddhi means self-realization or Brahman realization. I think the word siddhi basically just by itself means perfection, perfect.
Okay, that explains it. Thank you so much.
Madhurya Leela, would you please comment on the next section that we're going to hear from Prabhupada? Madhurya?
So our Krishna consciousness movement on this principle, we are speaking not anything manufactured by us. That is not our business. Because how we can manufacture? We are defective, we are deficient, imperfect. What is the use of my philosophy? What is the use of my thinking? Generally they say, I think, in my opinion. He does not think that I am a rascal I have no value of my opinion. He thinks that he is something very big. No. Because our senses are imperfect, whatever knowledge you have gathered by our sense speculation, that is imperfect. That cannot be perfect. Therefore, we have discussed already, tattva amnayam. We have to receive knowledge from discipleship. Tattva, that then we will understand the truth. Tattva, this subject matter we have discussed already. Amnayam, evang parampara. We should not manufacture knowledge. We should take knowledge from the perfect. Just like here it is said, Bhagavan Uvach. In the Bhagavad Gita also, Bhagavan Uvach. This Krishna consciousness movement is that we are simply trying to convince people what Krishna has said. That's all. We are not manufacturing it. So that is our business. Krishna says, Manmana bhavamad bhaktamad jajimang namaskuru. We are training our disciples. Just always think of Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, and becomes Krishna's devotee, offering prasadam, dress him nicely, Manmama bhavamad bhakta, madhyay, worship me, worship Krishna, the same thing. Krishna says, worship me, we are saying, worship Krishna. Krishna says, surrender unto me, we are saying, surrender to Krishna. So we have no difficulty.
Oh. Wow. Prabhupada is so powerful. Amazing. Well, I don't know where Madhurya Leela is, but how about, there's another person here who I'm not familiar with the name. Arush? Ayash? Let me see. Not there. He keeps coming and going. Okay, then I won't call on her. Chaitamayi, would you like to read or comment on this?
Wow, this is so beautiful. The line that really jumps out at me is generally they say, I think, and in my opinion. He does not think that I am a rascal. I have no value of my opinion. Wow.
We discussed this before. Go on,
Wow.
Chaitanya.
So it's just, this is due to our having defects. Because we have these 4 defects, we have imperfect senses, we have prone to illusion, cheating, and we make mistakes. Because of that, nothing that we can conceive of in our own minds, it can be worthy of. It's like the firefly in front of the sun. We are so very small, and if we're intelligent, we think it through. We really should be relying on the supreme creator of the universe, because he has a design for everything. So Bhagavan Uvacha, that's our authority. That's our authority.
Along those lines, just to clarify where Prabhupada says here, therefore we have discussed already tattva annayam. We have to receive knowledge from disciplic succession tattva.
Yes.
He says we referred to this already. We discussed it already. Do you remember a few verses back? It wasn't in this lesson, but where Kapila Dev said to his mother, now I will speak to you that very ancient science, which I spoke previously to the great sages. And that same reference was also in Bhagavad Gita. So in that was tattva amnayam. That was what Kapila Dev said previously, that I'll speak to you this knowledge which existed. It's old. It's already there.
Okay. We have one more left. Thank you. Okay, we have one more left. And Faye, why don't you pay attention to this one and give us your divine commentary on it?
That is the advice here. Animitya Bhagavati, Bhagavati Bhakti. You cannot manufacture the ways of bhakti. Bhagavati, what is advised by Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord. Dharmant Sakshat Bhagavat Pranit. You cannot manufacture a line of dharma. Dharmanta sakshat bhagavat pranita. Dharma is the law given by the Supreme Lord. You cannot manufacture this dharma, that dharma, this dharma. No, dharma is one. Dharma cannot be different. Dharma means to abide by the orders of God. This is dharma. But if you do not know God, if you do not know what is order, then you must manufacture something, rubbish, and fight amongst yourselves. That is not dharma. Therefore, Bhagavad says, dharma prochita koitava atra. All cheating types of dharma is rejected and kicked out from Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma projita. Projita prakrishta rupena ujjita. Just like you collect all dust and throw it. Similarly, this Bhagavad dharma is not a cheating dharma. Bhagavad dharma means in relation with the Supreme Law. Bhagavati bhakti. Bhakti can be applied only to Bhagavan. Bhakti means the business between Bhagavan and Bhakta. That is bhakti. If there is no Bhagavan, then where is bhakti? And where is Bhakta? If Bhagavan is zero, then where is bhakti? Bhakti means a transaction between Bhagavan and Bhakta.
Wow, that's beautiful. Okay, Faye, what is this? Bhakti means the business between Bhagavan and Bhakta. Start with that.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. If we're going to think of Bhakti, because it's on the transcendental platform, it is a perfection. And on that perfectional state or platform, our best tendencies come forward as servants, Bhakta, because we have a relationship with Bhagavan, the Supreme Person. We're supposed to be serving unconditionally, without motive, without expectation of any results. Perfect service is rendering service without any expectations. If we do have a desire, the desire should be service of the Lord, pleasing the Lord. And if we aren't, again, I'm going back to the who do we serve, things that we learned from Srila Prabhupada. Are we serving our senses or Krishna's senses? If we think of the topmost example of Srimati Radharani and the gopis, everything they did for Krishna in Vrindavan was to please him. They weren't after an ulterior motive. Unconditional love is something that, as humans, we know it's there, we know it's possible, we know God can give us unconditional love. But since we're on the material platform, we don't come close to that. We can't love our children, our spouses, our family unconditionally. We try our best, but those are efforts on the material platform. Our goal is to serve Krishna spontaneously, automatically, fully devoted, laser-faced, focused. This is the object of our eternal affections.
Okay,
This
so that's
is our Supreme Master. This is the Supreme Lord. And if you don't have that, I love the line that Srila Prabhupada says, well, if Bhagavan is zero, then where is Bhakti? Bhakti means the transaction between Bhagavan and Bhakta. It's
Very
the
good.
reciprocity that's inherent in serving Krishna, loving Krishna, practicing bhakti. It's a relationship.
Good. It's a relationship. So this animita, this is a very important part of what we're discussing today. Thank you, Faye. That was wonderful. And does anyone else have something to say about this anamita? And here's bhakti means the transaction between Bhagavan and Bhakta. This is also probably talking about personalism here. And this is the foundation of our relationship with Krishna, has to be with this animita, namita. Anyone have something to add to that?
I just have a question. If anybody has any objection with this statement, bhakti can be applied only to Bhagavan. People have devotion, and can we perform bhakti to someone else, some other person?
Whoa, good question.
No.
Oh,
No.
Ian, go on, Ian.
No.
Why not? You said it a lot of times. So why not?
Because he said there has to be a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Bhakti and Bhagavan. So it's only relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah. You're giving fully bhakti. What does bhakti actually mean? Tell me what bhakti means.
Loving devotional service. Engaging
Fully.
in loving devotion.
Right. Unconditionally.
Yeah.
Go on. I want you to talk.
You got me there.
Shyam Govinda rose his hand too.
Oh, thank you, Ian. This is it.
Okay.
Bhakti can be applied only to Bhagavan. That's okay. So that was what Ian said. What about you, Shyam?
Oh, I have a Shastric injunction this time. It's in the prayers that we chant in the morning, the 10 offenses. So not to consider names like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. So in other words, no one's more than Lord Vishnu. So that's the highest platform of love, maybe.
No doubt. That's a good statement. But what does that mean about Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma? What do we do? What's our relationship with them? What does that mean? That's a big question too. Shyam?
Well, I don't know. I guess I can't consider them equal or independent of Lord Vishnu. So in other words, that they're not the topmost, so there must be someone more topmost.
Right. Even Narada Muni asked Lord Brahma, who are you praying to? Right. So, Pati, you want to answer this? You want to speak about
Yes,
this?
back to the verse. Am I unmuted? Yeah, back to the verse again. Bhakti can be applied only to Bhagavan. Bhakti means the business, as Faye was pointing out, between Bhagavan and Bhakta. Bhakti, in its true, essential, concentrated essence, is the reciprocation between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and someone else, his devotees, his Shaktis, his servants. That one verse, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. Nityo Nityanam means that he's the one amongst all the other eternals. Chaitanas Chaitananam means that he's the one amongst all the other conscious entities. Eko Bahonam Yo Vidadati Kaman. Eko means one. He's the one supplying everything for everyone else. Everyone is a servant of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Everything else comes from him. Janmadhyasya yataha, the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, that from which everything is born. Everything comes from a source. So when whoever out there in any form serves the Supreme Person with the resources supplied by him, Eko Bahonam, Yovidadatikam, and he's supplying the energy and resources to everyone. When those are used in his service, that's bhakti. Nothing else is bhakti. It might be devotion. Somebody might say, oh, I have bhakti for my family, or I have bhakti for my girlfriend, or I have bhakti for my dog. It's not bhakti. It's devotion, no doubt, but it's not, it's misplaced, or it's directed somewhere else than Bhagavan, then it's not bhakti.
Another point, that Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are devotees of Krishna. They are devotees, and their main object is to, in fact, they are two personalities who are this four authorized Vaishnava Sampradayas. They are in charge of two of them. Of course, Lord Brahma is our guru, and Shiva is our guru. Shiva is Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. So, you know, these are special personalities who are to be considered as guru. They are not God, but they are pretty close. They are not to ever be disrespected, because they are guru, right? Sham, does that make sense to you? Can you understand?
Yeah, thank you for, I saw it from a different perspective.
Okay, because you know, a lot of devotees used to in the beginning think, oh, demigods. We have to understand that these particular demigods are Vaishnava gurus. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything? Okay, that was huge.
I think that was full, yes.
That was very full, and
Everybody
I hope
can digest now.
I hope that everybody, as a result of all of this, and we'll get more used to doing it, and maybe a little quicker. But the point is, as my husband was saying, to hear from Srila Prabhupada directly. That we're trying to encourage everyone to do that by teaching his books and by hearing from him. It is remarkable. You are associating with the Nitya Siddha when you hear directly from Srila Prabhupada. It's a great opportunity. So I hope that everyone will get practiced in this art of hearing from Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai everyone. Happy New
Year.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
We pray that we will become really Krishna conscious this new year. That is our goal. So please, Krishna.